availability. So we all talk about, I am talking about high availability 99%, all the nines. So in a VMware, to get to provide the high availability, there are following things are there, like cluster. There should be the servers, the EXI host should be connected in a cluster. Then they should be having the CS storage, and then a vCenter server configured for the high availability environment. So EXXI or VMware software is another big world like Microsoft Azure. And in that, this cluster configuration and the shared storage configuration and vCenter server should be configured for high availability. vCenter server. So vCenter server, let me go back to my lecture. Okay. So the last week we have gone through the vCenter server. Okay. So vCenter server are basically, so there are vCenter client and there are vCenter server. So vCenter server are actually used to manage many EXXI hosts. And EXXI is actually another software feature available by the VMware. So for high availability, so when the high availability was not available before this VMware era or cloud computing era, when people were having these servers, that time they were to make their server available, what they used to do, they used to create a copy of the server. So I was working in IBM. At that time I was working on one of the software of the IBM, and that software was basically to do the replication. It was, so IBM had a replication software. I was being involved in the development of it. So that replication software can replicate whatever happening in the particular server. You can configure the millisecond replication or a per second replication or real-time replication, and you can have many replication of it. Ideally, a big company maintain at least 3 replication, means what currently running, and then there is another replication at another server, and there will be another replication at another city, so that if a disaster happen here, then it can be available from there. So before this high availability was there, failure of a single host meant that, so in one EXI host, there can be many virtual machines. And if the high availability is not available, that means if the host fails, then all the virtual machine will fail. Means that all the VM will be down. And this was basically mean that all the eggs was in the one basket, and if that one basket drops, then all the egg will be spoiled. And this used to be quite a concern for companies, and they were not putting the things on the virtual server. So they were maintaining like multiple server, and when one server fails, then they simply switching on to another server, and internally they were using this different software to replicate the system. And that was causing them the cost. And but EXXI, the VMware came with the high availability quite many years ago, 14-15 years ago, and that actually helped for the high availability. Now, how they are doing it? They are using this resource check, so that it's ensuring that the capacity is always available. So when you are creating this availability set, availability zone, they each sharing this heartbeat with each other, and there is one master which is actually keeping track of which VM is actually on and which VM is off, and which storage set is available and not available. So this resource check ensures the capacity is always available in order to restart all the VM affected by a server failure. So one server one EXXI host or a server on which many VMs are running. And when we are saying that we want high availability, and this VMware or other software is providing this high availability, they have to ensure that whatever happening in this host has to be available in another host without the loss of data or any kind of services. So in order to do that, this they need to have obviously when we are talking about this host has to be replicated, means when the host fails, all the VM has to be available to another host, because availability we have to maintain it. So to do that, there is a software feature is there in that it monitors all the capacity it needs at any point of time, so that it can utilize and also use the reserved space capacity. When a failure happens, it can restart the virtual machine there. So like a failure happen of a host at one particular place, everything happening in that VM, that the VM can be recreated into another host and the availability will be there. So in high availability, when the host crashes or fails, host means EXXI host, basically the physical server on which we are creating the VM. The VM will be restarted at another host. And if there is a very small downtime, I will later on tell you how much downtime is there, which is only related to the time taken for VM to restart. Now, to do high availability, no person is sitting. It is done automatic by a software. That software detects automatically whether a server is failing or failed. So in that case, the high availability software has the automated process that does not need any administrator interference. And it is going to automatically decide if host is failed, and it is going to simply move the VM to another host. And all this happen seamlessly without any human interference. Neither the passive standby host, so that means if one host has failed, whatever activity happening in that host is moved to another host. So the another host is actually a passive standby host, right? So from one host, I am moving thing to the another passive standby host, so that neither the passive standby host is required nor any extra VM is required. That means we do not have to keep a standby host with all the VMs are running. If a VM for which it's crashing, the parent host is crashing, it can restart on any of the other running host. And for high availability, the VMware does not use vMotion, so it is not doing the live migration. It enables the high availability on cluster setting. That means you have many EXXI hosts running, right? You have EXXI host here, you have EXXI host. So when we are running this virtualization, there can be a lot of EXXI hosts, and it can be 600 of them or many more of them. That means when we are creating many hosts, that time we can create a cluster of them. Let's say EXXI host number 1, and there is a EXXI host number 2, EXXI host number 5. We can create, okay, EXXI host 1 and 5 are cluster. And in that case, if this EXXI host 1 crashes, then the load, all the VM and every activity can be transferred to this EXXI host number 5. So that's if the cluster has to be maintained, and both all these hosts should have the shared storage. Shared storage does not mean that they can see each other's data. Means, remember we had in the last lecture where the mobile phone, the internal memory and external memory are logically combined to create a logical storage. So like that, the logical storage will for various hosts will be made, and that's what meant by the shared storage, that they are using the same storage pool, but they are not able to see each other what they are doing it. But if needed, they can ask, I want this much space. So when the shared storage is there and the cluster configuration is done, vCenter server is there, then only the high availability can be maintained. So automatic detection happen whenever a host fails. All the activity from the failing host will be moved to the another host, which is the cluster host. So we don't need any standby host for it. So that host is running it, and if that host has a capacity, then it will be moved. So there can be many hosts are clustered together. So if one failed, then this host capacity will be taken care by the other host. It is very much like if you are working in a company and if 2 employees leave the job, the work which 2 employees were working will not be stopped. The load will be shared with other employee who can handle the job. So it is very much like this, that all the employee of the company are working as a cluster, and they are, if 1 or 2 employee is either left the job or not coming to the office for certain days, then that work can be shared and given to the other people to handle it. It is very similar to that. So you can see that this is the EXI server, and it actually has 3 VM running. The other one has 1 VM running. This third one has 2 VM running. So if let's say this host has a crash, and then all these 3 VM can be shifted to the clustered other host. So this VM can go here, this VM can go here, and this VM can go here. So 3 VM can be shifted to other host, and all these hosts are actually having the shared storage. So only in this condition, this high availability can be maintained. So we understood it, and all these EXXI hosts these are all EXXI hosts, and they have been clustered together, and they are using the shared storage. So prerequisite of VMware high availability, as I said, that all hosts must have the license. Obviously, the VMware high availability license software, they need it, and at least 2 hosts is needed. Here I have given the example of 3, but at least 2 hosts should be in a cluster for having the high availability. When one fails, then the other can be used. Okay. All the hosts need to be configured with static IP address. That is very careful. Like if one is failed and other hosts are having dynamic IP address, that means their IP address are keep on changing, then the central system, which actually maintaining the heartbeat of the different different hosts, will not know that which is available. So they should have the fixed static IP address, that is called a static IP address. And domain dynamic host configuration protocol, so that it must ensure that addresses of each host persist across when it is rebooted. When the VMs are moved, they will be rebooted, right? The virtual machine must be located on a shared storage. That means a logical storage, not on the local storage. Otherwise, if one is failed, that means if this EXXI host, the storage should not be here. The storage will be at other place. Otherwise, if this host fails, then the storage available here will not be available at all, right? Because the complete host has failed. And if the storage was here, that storage will also fail. So in the case of high availability, the storage are also kept outside the host. And all hosts in the VMware should be in a cluster and must have the domain name system configured. And now you can understand that why Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram went offline for 6 hours. Maybe anything in the configuration had an issue. Okay. Now, some notes with high availability is like this, that it works as a master and slave architecture. That means when we have made a cluster for high availability, one of the hosts should be made a master, because that is going to decide where the load should be moved in case of failure. So when we enable high availability, one master should be there, and they do election process. Means in the VMware software, they decide by the election automatically that who will be the master. And all the hosts in the cluster will vote for who will be the master. And the decision is done based on who has the largest number of data stored. That means the host which has the maximum number of the data stored, it means that it is hosting the maximum number of VM. So that means if this host is a master, that means it has the maximum number of VMs running, and that's why it has the largest data stored. And when it has a lot of loaded, then it cannot be used to share the load. So it can only say, okay, you take care of this load because you are not loaded. You take care of this load because you are not loaded. Okay. So master is decided, and once one host is failed, and if that was a master, then the other host is server is going to decide who is the master. And once that master is decided, then this will taken care of. So after the election process, the master will be decided and other EXI hosts are considered as the follower of this master. And if the master will go down or passes, then a new election process will occur to decide who will be the master. There is another concept called failover time, like how much time will be the downtime when we take high availability. How much downtime will be there? So that means downtime is measured when the host stop running. Now, how to know when the host or VM stop running? That means the communication with the concerned, the VM stop communicating with them. Is basically they stop giving the heartbeat to the controller, which is maintaining what is the heartbeat is there, whether the server is running or not running. So from the time the VM is migrated and it start giving the heartbeat. So that is called failover time, and they estimated that there were 64 hosts, and the web client was trying to use. There is a the vSphere web client is trying to make the connection with the host. And on collectively, there are 6,000 VMs were there, virtual machine were running on it. So they found that if one host fails, there is around 460 seconds of downtime to transfer and maintain all this process. So approximately more than 7 minutes, like 420 and 40 seconds. So 7 minutes, 40 seconds will be the downtime. And after that, there will be 30 to 40 seconds for high availability to get into the action. So in total, 8 minutes will be the downtime will happen for high availability. So you can understand, even taking so much into the consideration, high availability will take at least 8 minutes of downtime. So what is a failover time? Like if a web client is actually talking to the vCenter server, and vCenter server has many EXXI hosts, and each EXXI host is hosting the VM. So to know when they have been moved, the VMs are moved to another host, and then they started rebooted and they started giving the activity. All this from the stop to restart is called a failover time, and that is roughly around 7 to 8 minutes will happen for VMware. Remember, ESXi, the high availability work at the host level. That means we are talking about the host failure. Okay. We are not talking about the virtual machine failure. We are talking about the complete ESXi host has failed. And in that case, only the high availability come into the picture, not when each individual virtual machine is failing. ESXi host level of failure or high availability come into the picture. If any of the ESXi host fail, then high availability will restart those virtual machine onto another ESXi host. So remember, this is a very important question. When does high availability happen? At the ESXi, at the host level, at the virtual machine level, at the cluster level, at the data center level. Okay. It happened at the host level. So with this, today's class, we have crossed the 4 o'clock time, and I would like to say thank you for being and listening to the lecture.